Okay, so my theory about it being the son that Uwe called was way off base. It was not the son, it was the reporter, which totally makes sense. But that whole scene where they're kind of like the whole neighborhood is there and they're kind of standing up and the social worker's like, well, who's gonna take care of him? And they're like, I am, and I am. It's like, ah, that's so sweet. And I love that the internet thing comes back the way that Uwe pronounces it. Because when they were talking about all the blackmail they have on the guy, he's like, where did you get all this? On the internet, rages Uwe. That's really cute. Anyway, that was funny. In chapter 36, this quote, Uwe found it very difficult to reason with the little troll because she didn't seem to understand normal argumentation. So he followed her with dissatisfaction through the front hall towards her room and sat on her bedside, reading to her with his usual Uwe excitement, as Parvane once described it, although Uwe didn't know what the heck she meant by that. So primarily the reason I highlighted this was calling the kid, this is the 3-year-old, calling her the little troll. Alan refers to babies as tyrants all the time. Although I think that he got that phrase from Josiah Bancroft. I'm pretty sure he got that idea from Josiah Bancroft in the 4th book. I like that Uwe bonds with the 7-year-old over her love of houses and that he wants to support that. And then you find out that that's who he bought the iPad for in the beginning of the book. That was really sweet. I really thought that moment was sweet. And also it was like, okay, it makes way more sense that he went with Jimmy. That he brought Jimmy with him. Because the idea of picturing him being in that store by himself is funny. I also really loved this quote in chapter 37 when, I don't know how to say these names, I feel so bad. Mirsad? That's my best guess. But his dad comes to talk to him. And so that evening, Uwe has his dinner with Parvane and Patrick, while a father and son talk about disappointments and hopes and masculinity in 2 languages in Uwe's kitchen. Maybe most of all, they speak of courage. Sonia would have liked it. Uwe knows that much. But he tries not to smile so much that Parvane notices. It's really sweet. But anyway, back to the tech store and Jimmy and Uwe. I love that Jimmy's translating for him. Oh, I need someone like Jimmy to come with me. Oh, like the sales associate. Okay, but, what model do you want? 16, 32, 64? And Jimmy's has to translate for him. There are different versions with different amounts of memory. Jimmy translates for Uwe as if he were an interpreter for the Department of Immigration. Oh. And then the sales associate. So do you want the normal or the 3G model? Jimmy, will it be used mainly at home or will she use it outdoors as well? Uwe, I want the best one. Understood? And then Jimmy, let's say 3G, 128 gig, all the bells and whistles you got. And can you throw in a cable? Just that whole exchange was really funny to me. And I love when she calls him granddad. I think I might have teared up when he gives her that iPad and the 7-year-old calls him granddad, because he didn't get to be a granddad because he didn't get to have a kid. And so it's sort of like this little family is sort of like his adopted daughter and her family, and so these are his adopted grandkids in many ways. And it's just really sweet. And I love that he, that really affects him, because he just kind of stands there in the hall for a little bit and processes. And so then he heads on out home. And of course, that's when things start to get messy. He finds the burglars and tries to confront them and basically has a heart attack type thing. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. He's dying. And, they, throughout the book, Bachman sets it up that something's wrong with his heart, So I kind of expected this to be the end. And I thought I was very sad by that idea. But I did find it really funny. The last thing Ube has time to think before everything goes dark is that he has to make her, meaning Pravani because she's chasing after him, promise that she won't let the ambulance drive down between the houses because vehicular traffic is prohibited in the residential area. Oh, he's so funny. Okay. And then in this last chapter, chapter 39, is that the last one? Yeah, because it's an epilogue. And this one is just the title of the novel, A Man Called Ube is the name of the chapter. This whole first chunk was just beautifully written. But I'll read the first paragraph because that was my favorite. I highlighted the last little bit. Death is a strange thing. People live their whole lives as if it does not exist, and yet it's often one of the great motivations for living. Some of us in time become so conscious of it that we live harder, more obstinately, with more fury. Some need its constant presence to even be aware of its antithesis. Others become so preoccupied with it that they go into the waiting room long before it has announced its arrival. And this was the part I highlighted. We fear it, yet most of us fear more than anything that it may take someone other than ourselves. For the greatest fear of death is always that it will pass us by and leave us there alone. And I thought, yeah, I think that's very insightful. It was very interesting to me that this chapter starts with death is a strange thing. And then later, love is a strange thing. And then the epilogue, life is a curious thing. If I was writing this out, I would find a more eloquent way to talk about what that might mean. But I guess right now all I'm saying is I noticed it. And I thought it was cool. But I love how much his neighbor loves him. You know, you see this, like, you know, but then you really see it here. When she goes to the hospital and, you know, they have to hold her back and she refuses to go home and stays really late. And, you know, she screamed out loud and collapsed on the floor like a shattered porcelain vase, her face buried in her hands. Love is a strange thing. It takes you by surprise. And I love how even in the hospital, Uwe's like, I think you'd better calm yourself down, woman. And you didn't let those sods bring the ambulance into the residential area, did you? And I will say this is one way that Uwe is totally different from Alan, because after Alan's car accident, Alan in the hospital is, I don't know how to describe him. I think the people in the ER, I think they said something along the lines of, like, he was the cheeriest ER patient they'd ever had, or something along those lines. Cheeriest. I don't know if cheeriest is the maybe nicest car accident victim they'd ever seen in the ER, because he was just so relieved and so grateful that, you know, that really showed in how he treated the hospital staff and how he treated all of us, even though he was scared and in pain. And, you know, fear and pain make people do, not make people, but they can cause us. They can distract us so that the worst in us comes out. But that's not what happened with Alan. You know, I remember him asking the night he was still in the trauma room, glass was still in his hair and stuff, and he was asking for a glass of water, and someone brought him water, and he was just so appreciative. He's like, thank you so much. I think Uwe has a slightly different hospital demeanor than Alan does. Slightly. It is really sweet though when Parvani finds out that he listed her as next of kin, and she like teases him about it, and he's like, shut it, will you? And the doctor's probably like, this is not the appropriate time to be treating one another this way. Her response when she finds out what his condition is: his heart is too big, the doctor states crassly, and then she just dies laughing. It's so funny to me. I love that. And he's like, you see what I have to put up with? Oh my gosh. You know, the doctor's saying, kind of giving the prognosis, like, this is what you can expect. He could have a few more months or a few years. And she says, oh, don't concern yourself about that. Uwe is quite clearly utterly lousy at dying. And like, she doesn't even know the extent to which that is true, because this entire book he's been trying to kill himself and not succeeding. That whole exchange in that scene was really funny to me. Okay, the epilogue. I don't have a ton to say about the epilogue. I did love how touched Jimmy was when Amel, I think might be the name of Mirsad's dad. On the other hand, he names a sandwich after Jimmy, and Jimmy himself says it's the most magnificent present he's ever had. I love that. And that they adopt a little girl, and Jimmy brings her along to Anita and Rune's every afternoon without fail at 3 o'clock when they have coffee. And the fact that every time she runs into the house with her arms reaching out for Anita, a euphoric smile fills his, meaning Rune's, entire face without exception. I love that. That's beautiful. And it's evidence that they really did step up and to help take care of him, that Anita wasn't on her own. I love that you get to see Uwe caring for the neighbors that he's already met, and then investing in the new people in the neighborhood, other people he hasn't met yet. And he's doing what he did in Spain before Sonia's car accident, when she would rest and he would go out and wander the street and just help people. And in a way that's, I'm gonna get emotional. It's like that, I said car accident, bus accident. It's like that. He had a lot of negative experiences in his life that kind of shut down, like caused him to withdraw and not show up as his authentic self. Because that's how you keep from getting hurt. That's how you keep from being taken advantage of. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think Alan can relate to that. Where after enough times that life knocks you down, you can start to just shut off the world and kind of curl inside yourself in a protective stance. And in a way, it's like Spain was the last straw, like the bus accident was like the last straw for him, where he was like, I'm not safe anywhere in the world except with my wife. And then here, at the end of his life without her, he's finding ways to be able to be himself in the community again. And that's beautiful. And I think a lot of us can relate. And I think Alan can relate. But what I really hope, if Alan reads this book, what I really hope that he sees is how beloved Uwe is. I lost it when I got to the line, more than 300 people come to the funeral. And when Patrick sees all the people who have come to say their farewells to Uwe, he elbows her gently in her side and grins with satisfaction. Uwe would have hated this, wouldn't he? And then she laughs, because he really would have. I wonder if he knew how beloved he was, like the character, you know. I wonder if, I think he did, at least by the people close to him. So I hope the people like Uwe in the real world know how beloved they are. A lot of people aren't comfortable with ooey gooey stuff and don't really want us to all sit down and tell them all the things that we love about them, because it just makes them squirmy. But I think that a lot of times we don't talk about the things that we love about people until we lose them. And that's sad, because then they don't get to hear those words and receive that love. So, hello, watcher, whoever you are. I know many of you personally. I don't think a lot of people I don't know are gonna watch this, but in case nobody's told you today, you are beloved. You are cherished and treasured and dearly loved. Okay.